I received the divorce papers by email while I was still in the desert. 13 years of marriage ended in a PDF attachment. My name is Nathan. I am 42 years old, a staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I had been in Kandahar for 4 months when Becky decided she was done waiting. The subject line of her email read, "Let's be adults about this." The message itself was only 3 sentences long. She had already filed the paperwork. She had already emptied our joint bank account. She had already moved her new boyfriend, Jeremy, into our house in Spokane. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, got dressed for my shift, and said nothing to anyone. That night, when I returned to my bunk, I replied with one word, "Understood." That was it. No argument. No begging. No threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, noticed something was off. "You good, man?" he asked, not looking up from his book. "Yeah," I said, "just some stuff back home." He nodded, and that was the end of it. Military guys know when to leave things alone. The truth is, I was not surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had already begun to change. It was small things at first. Becky stopped asking about my day. She started working late at the dental office where she answered phones. She began to go to the gym 3 times a week, though she never seemed to break a sweat. There were new clothes, new friends I never met, and new passwords on her phone. I did not confront her. I did not start checking her messages or following her around. That is not who I am, but I was not blind either. So, I made some quiet moves of my own. Nothing dramatic, just precautions. I secured important documents in a storage unit across town. Birth certificate, marriage license, and a house deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan. I also placed my grandfather's watch and my mother's old silver there, things that truly mattered. I opened a separate bank account and began diverting part of my pay into it. Not enough that Becky would notice, but enough so I would not be starting from zero if things went south. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not to a husband heading to war. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I was not. What she did not know was that I had prepared for this moment, and what she did not understand was that I never start fights, but I always finish them. I first met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my buddy Jason in Spokane. Becky was finishing nursing school at the time, but ended up working admin at a dental practice instead. "Less stress," she said. We were married 8 months later. Becky used to tell me she was proud of my service, though she never quite understood it. Her father was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist, no military background in her family. She would ask when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years, the Army was my career, not just something I was doing to pass the time. In 2014, we bought our house. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a quiet neighborhood. The mortgage was in my name because of the VA loan, but I added her to the deed. That is what married people do. Share things. My dad died a year after our wedding, a heart attack while shoveling snow. My mom passed 3 years later from lung cancer, though she had never smoked a day in her life. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough to help us pay off student loans and still have a financial cushion. During our marriage, I deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan. Each time I came home, Becky seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, like she was playing a role she had grown tired of. "I didn't sign up to be a military wife," she told me once, after I mentioned re-upping for another 4 years. "I'm tired of being alone all the time." I understood. I did. But the Army was the only place I ever felt like I truly belonged. I was good at my job, and people depended on me. By 2019, things had started shifting more noticeably. Becky got irritated when I called during her girls' nights. She talked about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was now living her best life. She made comments about how we no longer had much in common. I suggested counseling. She said we were fine, that was just a phase. But then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I had never met, the new clothes, and the gym membership she rarely used. I should have confronted her. But that is not how I operate. My dad taught me to think before I speak, to be sure before I act. So I waited and I prepared because my gut told me something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after I received the divorce email, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. A notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal. $88,500. Almost everything that was left. I set my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance showed $22.37. Our savings, $47,000 we had built up over the years, was gone, completely transferred to an account I did not recognize. Murphy, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over. Bad news. I locked my phone. Nah, just some account stuff. That night, I called the bank from the base phone center. They confirmed what I already suspected. Becky had been moving money for weeks. Small withdrawals at first, then larger ones. The big transfers started the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching other soldiers laugh as they called their kids, their wives, their parents. Normal life happening all around me, while mine was burning down. That was when Wilson found me. Heard from Alvarez, you look like you'd seen a ghost at dinner, he said. What's up? I usually keep personal things to myself, but Wilson had once pulled me out of a bad situation in Kandahar. I trusted him. My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house. I said, send me divorce papers while I was on patrol last week. Wilson did not give me the usual lines. I'm sorry, or that's rough, or you'll find someone better. He just asked, what's your plan? Not sure yet, I said. He nodded. Let me know if you need anything. That night, I could not sleep. I opened my laptop and logged into our home security system. Something Becky probably forgot I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange truck in our driveway. A man I had never seen before was walking our dog. He was drinking from my coffee mug. He was wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt. And there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen I had renovated with my own hands. During my last leave, something shifted inside me. It was not anger exactly. Something colder, sharper, more focused. I closed my laptop, pulled out my phone, and started making a list. Called James, my Army buddy who became a lawyer. Checked the VA loan terms. Contact Master Sergeant about emergency leave. Review the refinance documents Becky had casually mentioned last year. Check the security on my military pension accounts. I did not feel sad anymore. I did not even feel angry. I felt clear. This was no longer about emotion. This was about strategy. At 5, before my shift started, I sent James an email with the subject line, need legal help, discreet and urgent. His reply came an hour later. Call me. Secure line only. When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I did not need to yell. I did not need to threaten. I did not even need to confront her. All I had to do was wait, watch, and let her own actions become the trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I did not tell Becky I was coming home. No calls. No texts. I checked into a motel in downtown Spokane under a different name and reached out to James. We met at a diner 10 miles outside of town. You look like hell, he said, sliding into the booth. Feel like it too, I replied. James handed me a folder. Everything we discussed, the house deed, loan documents, bank statements. And this, he pulled out a separate paper. Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances. It was a refinance application with my signature, except it was not my signature. The middle initial was wrong. The stroke pattern was off. Someone had tried to copy it, but they had not done it well. Becky did this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. James nodded. 3 months ago. Used the equity to pull out $330,000. Since the VA loan is only in your name, your signature was required. So she forged my signature, took out a loan against our house, drained our accounts, and then divorced me. I said, busy woman. James gave a humorless smile. It gets better. She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He has a record, 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I exhaled slowly. What are my options? Several. James said, but first, you need to decide what you want. I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. James smiled. Then here's what we do. The next day, I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was gone, but Becky's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while. For a moment, I thought about knocking on the door, confronting her face to face. But that was not the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank and met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance. I showed him my military ID, my driver's license with my real signature, and the forged documents. His face went pale. I'll need to report this immediately. He said, I understand. I replied, I've already filed a police report. That night, Becky texted me. Who have you been talking to at the bank? Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I did not respond. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office. I filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud and registered formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. Nathan, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we could discuss it like adults. Like adults. The same phrase she had used in her email. I still did not respond. That afternoon, James called. They froze the refinance money. And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The one in your name? Yeah, he got pulled over this morning. Suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle. Good, I said. That's not all. They found prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works. They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads? Looks that way. The police are investigating. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the floor. This was bigger than I had expected. A part of me wanted to call Becky to warn her old habits. But then I remembered the security footage. My house, my dog, my life, handed away like it meant nothing. No, this was the path now. I could not turn back. And truthfully, I did not want to. The next morning, I met with the bank's fraud investigator. His name was Thompson, short guy, tired eyes, coffee stain on his tie. This happens more often than you'd think, he said, spreading documents across his desk. Spouse deploys. Other spouse sees an opportunity. What happens now? I asked. We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance. But there's a problem. Some of the money is already gone. How much? About half. 14,000 S900. I leaned forward. Where did it go? Thompson hesitated. I'm not supposed to share that information. It's my house. My name was forged. My money was stolen. He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen toward me. These are the transfers out of the refinance account. I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer. Not Jeremy. Someone else I had never heard of. Who's Daniel Spencer? I asked. Thompson shrugged. Not my department. But you should ask your lawyer to subpoena the records. I called James as soon as I left the bank. Daniel Spencer, I said, let me run a check. An hour later, he called me back. Got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent. Specializes in quick sales, cash deals. She was planning to sell our house. I said, the realization hit like a punch to the gut. Looks that way. The deposits were probably earnest money to get him moving on a listing. But here's where it gets interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan before. Jeremy? Becky's boyfriend? Yeah, they've closed 3 deals together in the past 2 years. I sat down on a park bench, trying to process it. So this wasn't just Becky leaving me for some guy. This was, what? A planned operation? Maybe, James said carefully. I dug deeper into Jeremy Ryan. He has a pattern. Gets involved with women going through divorce, or with deployed spouses. I found 3 other cases. Each time, The woman's home gets sold well below market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a cut. Then he moves on. And Becky, I asked, she knew about this? Hard to say. Maybe she's a victim. Or maybe she's in on it. I rubbed my face. This wasn't just about Becky betraying me anymore. This was something calculated. Other military families had been victims too. What do we do? I asked. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. James said, this crosses state lines. Involves military personnel and VA loans. They're interested. That night, I sat in my motel room with a beer, thinking, wondering if Becky had been playing me our entire marriage, or she had just gotten swept up in Jeremy's scheme, wondering if it even mattered anymore. My phone buzzed. Another text from Becky. Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud, and Jeremy got arrested driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, who is Daniel Spencer? The typing dots appeared. Stopped. Appeared again. Stopped. Finally, her reply, I don't know what you're talking about. 14,600. I wrote back. Multiple transfers. House listing. No response for 10 minutes. Then, it's not what you think. I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, James called. The FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first case, but you might be the one that breaks it open. For the first time since getting that divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming out. I met with the FBI agents at their field office in Spokane, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They recorded my statement and took copies of everything James and I had gathered. Your case helps establish a pattern, Patel explained. Shows intent organization. Makes a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents. What about Becky? I asked. My wife. My ex-wife. The agents exchanged a look. We're still determining her level of involvement. Donovan said carefully. Did she ever mention financial difficulties? Pressure to sell a house. I thought back. She kept saying we were house poor, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary. Patel made a note. When did that start? About 6 months ago. Right around the time she must have met Jeremy. And the refinance? Donovan asked. Never discussed it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed. They asked more questions, took more notes. When we finished, Patel handed me her card. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't confront your wife or Ryan. We need to build this case carefully. I nodded. Understood. That evening, I drove back to our neighborhood and parked down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back. Must have gotten out of impound. Becky's car was gone. My phone buzzed. A text from Becky. We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. The next morning, I showed the text to James over breakfast. Don't go, he warned. Nothing good can come from talking to her right now. I won't, I said, but I want to know what she's really doing. At 9:30 a.m., we parked across from the house. 15 minutes later, Becky left, headed straight toward Riverfront Park. Now what? James asked. Now we wait. 20 minutes later, another car pulled up. Real estate logo on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him. They talked in the driveway, then went inside. Should we follow them? James asked. I shook my head. No need. I installed security cameras last year, inside and out. Everything uploads to the cloud. James raised an eyebrow. You didn't mention that before. Never came up, I said, pulling up the feed on my phone. On screen, Spencer and Jeremy stood in my living room. Spencer snapped photos while Jeremy gestured at the features of the house. I turned up the volume. Should list by the end of the week, Spencer said. Got a buyer already. Cash offer, as usual. How much? Jeremy asked. $420. We'll list at $470. They'll offer $420. Everybody's happy. Jeremy frowned. What about the husband? Becky says he's causing trouble. Spencer waved a hand. Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but with deployments and responsibilities, he'll take a settlement just to make it go away. I looked at James. He was already recording. I forwarded the feed to Agent Patel with a short message. Happening now. 30 minutes later, FBI vehicles surrounded the house. From down the street, I watched Spencer and Jeremy let out in handcuffs. My phone rang. It was Patel. "We got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme," she said. "Wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted sale under false pretenses. We'll need a formal statement from you." "Of course," I said. "And Mr. Briggs, your wife just arrived. She's distressed." I looked down the street. Becky stood on the lawn, hands over her mouth, watching as agents carried boxes of documents out of our home. "What happens to her?" I asked quietly. "That depends," Patel said, "on what she knew and on what you want." I watched Becky for a long moment. 13 years of marriage. Good years at the start before it turned into this. "I just want what's right," I said finally. The federal case moved quickly. Jeremy and Spencer both took plea deals, turning on each other and exposing a 3-state operation targeting military families. Becky claimed she knew nothing about the larger scheme. Said Jeremy convinced her I was hiding money and planning to leave her with nothing. Said the refinance was his idea, that she just went along. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, she agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my pension, and a signed confession about the forgery. In return, I didn't press charges. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that email from Kandahar. No fault. Clean break. On the day the last papers were signed, Agent Patel called. Jeremy Ryan was sentenced today. 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Spencer got 12. Thought you'd want to know. Thank you, I said. There's something else. We found evidence they did this to 11 other military families. Your case helped us establish the pattern. Those families might get their money back because of you. After we hung up, I sat on the porch of my rental, watching the sunset. I thought about those other men, deploying, believing their homes and marriages were safe, only to come back to betrayal. I hadn't planned on being the one to bring down Jeremy and Spencer's operation. I just wanted what was mine. But sometimes life writes a different ending. That night, Becky texted me. I never meant for things to end this way. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. A year later, I sold the house. Too many memories. Too much betrayal in those walls. With the money, I bought a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a creek running behind it. No neighbors for miles. I took early retirement. 20 years was enough. I'd given enough. Got a German shepherd named Scout. Started doing carpentry for locals. Simple work that kept my hands busy and paid the bills. My pension covered the rest. Sometimes I thought about Becky. Heard she moved back to Oregon, working at another dental office. Starting over. I didn't hate her anymore. Didn't feel much of anything, really. She made her choices. I made mine. One evening, I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband was Navy, deployed when Jeremy and Spencer tried their scheme on her. The FBI had given her my name. You don't know me, but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to walk away. I read it twice. Then I pinned it to my fridge. Some days, when the silence got too heavy, I'd look at that letter and remember. Something good came out of all this. Last I heard, Jeremy and Spencer were still in prison. The system worked, for once. As for me, I was finding my way forward. One quiet day at a time. Building something new. Something that couldn't be stolen, forged, or betrayed. Something that was just mine. Forever.